Man, if we got a great week this week, we've got Jerry Colangelo, legendary here in the state of Arizona. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. I show the people I've been away.
Piece of Arizona history, especially if you're a sports fan. Jerry Colangelo joins the show this week with a great interview. A special Super Bowl edition of Broomhead's Best and hashtag this. But every show we start with something we call the sweep. Roundup of the big news of the week, and nothing bigger than the New Hampshire primary. Donald Trump, it's a blowout. Donald Trump wins the New Hampshire primary, and most importantly, I want to bet. Governor Kasich comes in second, which is huge for him. He was expected to finish well in New Hampshire, but this is a solid win. It makes him relevant again. Chris Christie suspending his campaign, coming in a distant sixth. Jeb Bush in fourth, Ted Cruz in third. Marco Rubio behind Jeb Bush, and then, of course, Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson. So we're going to see now as the field begins to thin a little bit in the Republican side of the primary. Let's talk about the Democrats for a minute. Bernie Sanders in a blowout. Let me tell you how bad it was for Hillary Clinton that night. Now, she tried to spin this like a big victory for her. Wait a minute. The only demographic she did well, two demographics that helped Hillary Clinton where she was solid. People over the age of 65 and Democrats that made more than $250,000 a year. Other than that, Bernie Sanders in a runaway. This is how bad it was. Every candidate has what they call a victory party. Whether they win or not, they call it a victory party, where they watch the results roll in and see how well they did. You know what was missing from Hillary's victory party? Television sets. You know why? They didn't want to see what was happening. They just threw themselves a little party. She gave a speech, and off they went. With now on the Republican ticket, Chris Christie suspending his campaign, who else will be next as the field begins to narrow? That's what we need to watch for. South Carolina, Nevada, and then on to the rest of the country. Super Bowl controversy, right? No one wants to talk about this one. Usually, the NFL figures, if you're talking about us, we're happy. Not this. Beyonce and the Super Bowl performance talking about, but honoring Malcolm X, honoring Black Panthers, the Black Lives Matter movement. I got to tell you, I believe people should stand by their principles. You should do what you believe in. The Super Bowl is just not a place for that. I don't know why they do it. I don't know that there's any other controversy that anyone would get behind and say that it was okay to make that political statement of the Super Bowl. The NFL wants nothing to do with this. Let me tell you, they are in a no-win situation. If they condemn what Beyonce did, the Black Lives Matter crowd is going to be loud and say that it's a racist thing to say, that she should have every right to say that. Maybe even some of the players in the NFL. I don't know, but you know that would be their take on it. If they say that what she did was okay, then you're setting the stage for political statements to be made during the halftime show. So they're doing exactly what everybody would figure. They're not going to comment. They just want it to go away. And we'll see if it does, because there's going to be a protest. One of the Blue Lives Matter, the pro-police movement, will have a protest about this. Former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, Pete King, representatives from New York, both saying that this was overtly anti-cop. Now, another topic on politics. The Republican primary in Arizona is in March, and we have what's called a closed primary, which means only Republicans vote in the Republican primary, Democrats in the Democrat primary. Independents are not allowed to vote in either one of them unless they register before the end of February. I think it's February 22nd is the date. Unless they register to be a member of either one of those two parties by that date, you're excluded from the primary. So now they call it a preference election. So it's not open to the independents. Let me tell you, I believe it needs to stay a closed primary. And the reason why I believe that is because fix the party. I don't make any bones about the fact that I'm a registered Republican. And the difference between a Puritan and a Pilgrim, the Pilgrims threw their hands in the air and said, we're done, we're going to go start our own thing. That's what the independents have done. The Puritans stay and decide we're going to try to purify from within. We're going to try to fix the problems that are here. I'm still in the Puritan camp. I completely understand the independents that have kind of gone from both parties. I don't blame them for feeling disenfranchised, but this is a Republican and a Democrat primary. Those are the parties that should elect their candidate. Does it reflect the mass of voters? No, it doesn't. Absolutely does not. That's why each party should be doing a better job to attract those independent voices back into their party. Is it going to upset the apple cart? Is it going to have people in positions of power in each party in the state of Arizona lose their positions? Absolutely. Will it better represent each party? Yes, of course. Will each party look more like the voters across Arizona? Yes, it will. Which is the goal. And I just think you've got to keep it a closed primary, but you've got to do a better job as a political party to invite people to join you and make their voices heard. Don't make people feel like if they don't agree with you, that they're out. That's ridiculous. One of my favorite topics to hate, climate change. A directive impacting the Department of Defense. If you haven't heard this yet, if you are a veteran, how's this? The Department of Defense has been directed, the Pentagon has directed all of the members of their combat strategy teams, whether it's training or it is an actual mission, whatever it is, combat effectiveness, they are trying to make sure that global warming or climate change is brought into all of their planning. Think about that for a moment. You're going to worry about the carbon footprint of a tank or a jet? You're going to say we're going to send in 5 tanks instead of 12 because of the carbon footprint left behind? I don't know if it's going to be that ridiculous, but close enough. And while we're on this topic, the president, through the EPA, said he was going to, before he was president, he was going to make coal obsolete. So it's not about making alternative energies cheaper. He was going to make coal so expensive that it wasn't viable. The new EPA regulations on power plants has 29 states suing the federal government. Arizona is one of them, and now the Supreme Court said we're going to pause the EPA's regulations until we hear the case of the 29 states. So that's what's happening. I got to tell you, I believe that they're in big trouble on this one, just like they are on the Dreamers. It is really going to be an issue for them. Coming up in just a moment, we have got a great interview. Jerry Colangelo joins me for a phenomenal 2-part interview. We talk about the Suns, we're going to talk about the Diamondbacks in the World Series, his time with USA Basketball, and other things he's done right here in the state of Arizona. So I invite you to stick around. It's a phenomenal interview. If you spent time in Arizona, you're going to love Mr. Colangelo. We'll be back in a moment.
The Mike Broomhead Show is brought to you in part by Cliff Castle Casino Hotel and Sanderson Ford.
Well, thanks for being with me today. The word legend's thrown around a lot, but if you're in Arizona, there's not much in professional sports or just in any arena that hasn't had Jerry Colangelo's footprint or fingerprints on it. So thanks for being here for a few minutes.
My pleasure. Nice to be with you.
When you reflect, when you look back at some of the things that you've accomplished, what stands out to you the most? Is it the Suns because you were first here with them?
Well, what stands out is that coming here back in 1968, there was a different Phoenix and a different Arizona that existed, and what I saw was a blank slate and real opportunity, and I was a young guy who was dreaming big, and you know, one of my dreams was someday I wanted Phoenix to have 4 professional major league sports. And here we were just starting the first one, which was an NBA team, and so it was a thrill, waking up every morning to make that thing happen, and over a period of time, it did happen.
From an owner's perspective in professional sports, is it different being a fan, or are you still a fan first?
Well, it's interesting when people have asked me, you know, why did you end up sitting at Suns games where you did, you know, like 8 rows up behind the bench and so forth, when you could have sat anywhere in the building? It's because I'm still playing and I'm still coaching while I'm watching. So it's a little bit different than just being a fan and being involved in ownership. And that perspective from that seat gave me great insight. Looking at body language, eye contact, coach, player, player, officials, players, and coaches. You know, that's the way I was wired, and that's the way I wanted to do it. So it was a lot of fun.
Been a lot of really big, big names that have been on teams of yours, from Barkley and Nash, and you've had some big names that have worked. Who stands out? Do you have any relationships that stand out to you, or are there any moments when your ownership time when you thought this is really a big moment for the Phoenix Suns and for you?
Well, we had moments, you know, as you went along. I remember in the second year of the franchise, after losing a flip of the coin for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, we had the biggest turnaround in the history of the NBA, going from 16 wins to 39 wins. I actually took over the coaching chores at midseason. We made the playoffs in our second year. We had the Lakers with West, Baylor, and Chamberlain down 3-1 in a series, which would have been an incredible upset. And we lost that series when we lost our center to an injury. And so that was a big moment. You know, 6 years later, we're playing in the finals. And that was a pretty big moment for us. And I remember standing on the court at the old Boston Garden, and Red Auerbach, the legendary GM and coach of the Celtics, was at one corner and I was at another being interviewed on national TV. And I'm looking up at the flags and I'm thinking to myself, you know, this is pretty neat. We're 7 years old, we're in the finals, we're going to be back here a lot. Took 16 years to get back. That's how tough it is.
Yeah, and the league is improving. It really is an amazing league, and with the popularity like a LeBron James. But you don't get a LeBron James and the popularity of that league without where it started. And when you drive past the Madhouse on McDowell, when you drive past the Coliseum, still some good memories there, obviously.
Well, I'm flooded with memories all the time because you get to an age and you come to realize just how fragile life is, number one, and number two, how fickle it is and how quickly it passes by. You know, my story is I was 19 and I felt I could lick the world. I went to sleep one night and I woke up and I was 30. And about a week later, I went to sleep, same thing happened, I was 50. It goes by that quickly, so make the most of your time, try to make a difference. And that's what I tried to do from the time I set foot on Arizona soil back then.
You've made such an investment here, really your entire life, from bringing the professional franchises, but the properties, the Wigwam and the Biltmore golf courses, it really has been a work of your entire life. When you look at what's happening here now, is this the Phoenix you envisioned when you first came here in '68? Well,
I was thrown a little bit of a change-up, if you will, when the urbanization of Phoenix has taken place. This is one city that I wasn't sure that would ever happen. I'm basically an urban guy myself, and therefore, when you look at where the arena and where the ballpark went, it went downtown. I believe that we could be an impetus to really turn things around and make it a 24/7 downtown. But the infill that's taken place, the urbanization collectively in the city of Phoenix is amazing, and that's a big change that I didn't contemplate.
But do you like the direction that you see it going?
Well, I love Phoenix, I love Arizona. I felt that from day one we were the ambassadors carrying the flags of both the city and the state, and that's been fun, selling it. To establish the Phoenix Suns franchise as one of the elite franchises in professional sports, which is what we were categorized as, made me proud for our city, made me proud for our community, and then bringing pro baseball to Phoenix, winning a World Series faster than anyone in the history of the game in just 4 years. That was a big time moment for everyone, not just me.
In a moment, I want to expound on that, and I want to ask, because the future is what's happening now and some of the other things that are happening, but to talk about that Diamondback World Series right after 9/11 and the things that happened. So we'll wrap up that story and some future things in USA basketball. There's so much still that we can talk about. We'll be back in a moment. We're back, and in studio with me is Jerry Colangelo, and we were just talking about the World Series victory. Now, after 9/11, obviously, America, the entire world is watching that World Series. It was against the Yankees, so it couldn't have been any more storybook, could it?
Right, right. Well, I remember when we did well by opening the series, and I met with the media, international media, before the first game, and they said, how do you feel about being the fastest team ever to get to where you are? And my response was, well, we're excited. We're, to be able to play against the most storied franchise in history of baseball, the Yankees, and if we're going to win our first championship, why not, against the Yankees? And writer said, are you predicting you're going to win? And I said, no, but if I had my druthers, and you'll love this, we'll win it in the 7th game in front of a home crowd in the 9th inning, the bases loaded, 2 outs, and Gonzo at the plate.
No.
I said that, and it was in print. Of course, I was wrong. It was 1 out, not 2 outs, but everything else did happen. And while it unfolded in my seat next to the dugout, I'm thinking to myself, I've chased a championship my whole life in the NBA. That didn't happen, close but no cigar. But here we are, we're about to win a championship because it is happening.
I was watching it on TV, and I'm sure you hear everybody's story. So I was watching it on TV. I can't imagine, from your perspective, the years in the sport, what was that moment like when Luis Gonzalez makes that base hit, and it's over? They've beaten not only the Yankees, but Rivera, who was the closer of closers. What was that moment like?
Well, first of all, Jay Bell was on third base, and he scored the winning run. And when Gonzalez hit, we can kid about it today, this line shot, the blooper or whatever. Jay Bell started to come home for the winning run, and it looked like he was never going to get there. It was like in slow motion, because that's what happened to me. Everything just kind of blacked out for me. I saw it happen, and here's, in slow motion, Jay Bell trying to get to home plate. And when he hit home plate, everything exploded for me. So later in the locker room, what we're all celebrating, I said, here's to some of the guys, some of the players. I said, here's what I thought happened, and blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, he wasn't running in slow motion. That's about as quick as he could get to home plate. But he got there, and it was a great, great time. It did so much for our city, for our community, for the franchise, especially with the 9/11 situation. And finally got to sleep about 5 a.m. that night or morning. And the phone rang about an hour later, and it was President Bush. And I had known him for a while, and he called to say congratulations. I said, you're supposed to call me in the locker room. You're not supposed to call me at 6 in the morning. He said, well, I wanted to give you time to enjoy it, and it was kind of a special time.
What was New York like? I've talked to a couple of the Diamondback players that were there, and what was that significance of being in New York that soon after the attacks? Well,
you just felt, you felt proud to be in America. Let's start with that. We were all in it together. We all felt personally attacked when that tragedy took place. So there was a lot of sentiment going for the Yankees because of the fact that it took place in New York City. Yet half of the people that I saw in New York were Mets fans. Oh. And they didn't really care about the Yankees. So they were pulling for us. We did have support. But the games that we lost, the 3 games we lost there were like surreal also.
Right.
And, we weren't sure what was going to happen coming back for Game 6 and 7, but I remember on the team bus, I grabbed the mic and said, we're going home, and we're going to win Game 6 for sure. We're going to blow them out, and then we're going to be champions after Game 7. Because it was so quiet on the bus after another tough loss, and not that that had any real effect. It made me feel better that I was able to share that, my personal feelings. And of course, it was a blowout in Game 6. And Game 7 was one for the record books. And the series is considered one of the great series of all time.
Absolutely. When you look at what's next for you or what's going on now in your life, how much of it is passing on some of what you've accomplished and some of the things you've learned? Because your connection to Grand Canyon University and with USA Basketball and working with young players, how much of that is a part of what you're doing now?
Well, I believe very strongly in giving back, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to be in sports my whole life, and so that's where my head is. It's a matter of what more can I do? When you represent your country on an international basis relative to the Olympics, it doesn't get much better than that, and so I've really enjoyed this run. We're 72-1 since I've been involved with USA Basketball. We're going to Rio this summer, and I've already put someone in place to replace Coach K, and that's Popovich at San Antonio. And he said he'd take the job if I committed to stay with him through 2020. And so I'll be in Tokyo in 2020, and then it's sayonara for sure.
And then you're done?
Yeah.
Well, I've got it from my perspective. I've been here for 21 years, and you have been not just legendary in the sports world, but your benevolence, and you're really an ambassador to the state of Arizona. And you've always built teams with players that had leadership ability, and it's always great to be able to cheer for the Gonzos and guys like that. So from a fan perspective, I just wanted to say thank you, because what you've done has really been amazing to see it grow. So thanks for the time here today, and we appreciate you being what you've done in Arizona and what you're doing in the future and spending time on the show.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Jerry Colangelo here on the show. We'll be back in a few moments. Don't go away. This is the portion of the show where it's got to be something connected to Arizona and something we love. It's a Super Bowl edition of something we call Broomhead's Best. All right, the Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl. We all know that. Peyton Manning does a phenomenal job of winning the Super Bowl. Well, I guess phenomenal is a little bit of an overstatement, but his team did a great job of beating the Carolina Panthers. The Arizona connection? Brock Osweiler, backup quarterback, spent a part of the season as the starting quarterback. Most people would say the future of the Denver Broncos. I agree with all of that. As a matter of fact, Brock Osweiler is a free agent. I don't think that Peyton Manning stays with the Denver Broncos because he accounts for $28 million of the salary cap next year. And with them having so many free agents on the team, Brock Osweiler is going to get paid. I think he's the future there. Congratulations to a guy that played his college football right here in Arizona. Brock Osweiler, not only the future of an NFL franchise, but he's going to be walking around wearing a Super Bowl ring. I think that's fantastic. So this week, Brock Osweiler and the Denver Broncos are Broomhead's Best. Now it's what's burning up the internet, what's everyone talking about. It's also from the Super Bowl. It's called #this. The owner of the Denver Broncos is suffering from Alzheimer's disease, and it's a sad state, and the people of Denver have rallied around. The players on this team, all of them have rallied around the ownership and the family, the Bolin family that owns that franchise. Annabelle Bolin spoke on behalf of the family in receiving the Super Bowl trophy, and man, was it bad. I'm sorry to say, we're calling this #DenverWho. When giving her acceptance speech, she actually had it written on a piece of paper. I guess it's a pet peeve of mine, but you go to a wedding and you see, usually, no offense ladies, the maid or matron of honor, who is supposed to be the best friend of this woman, writes it down. She almost forgot the name of the Denver Broncos. It was very sad. You can find it online. Go and check it out. We're calling it #DenverWho. All right, we got a few minutes left before we close out the show. A special thank you and let you know what's coming up next week. So don't go away. We'll be back in a moment.
The Mike Broomhead Show is brought to you in part by Cliff Castle Casino Hotel and Sanderson Ford.
A big special thank you to Jerry Colangelo, and what a great interview. It was so much fun to talk to. Think about this. Phoenix Suns, you've got the Diamondbacks, you have the Coyotes, and you have the Arena Football League, and you have the Rattlers, who have won almost every championship since that league started. It seems like everything that man touches turns to gold. If you are a sports fan, you know how much he's done. But in addition to that, what he has brought to Arizona in the business of sports is immeasurable. He owns the golf courses at the Biltmore. His company does. They have the Wigwam Resort out in the West Valley as well. So Jerry Colangelo, thanks for being on the show, but for everything you've done for Arizona as well. Next week, we go down to the governor's office. We go down to the state capitol and sit down with Governor Doug Ducey. We've talked to him before. We get an update now from him on what's happening here in the state of Arizona. We'll be back next Saturday at 6 and 10 p.m. Of course, follow us on all social media. God bless.
Get more of Mike Broomhead on Facebook, Twitter, and of course weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 550 KFYI.